In the heart of Beverly Hills' luxurious Rodeo Drive, 67-year-old Lucille O'Neal, the devoted mother who once rocked her baby Shaquille through icy Georgia nights in a house with no windows and sacrificed everything to raise him in tough Newark streets, was coldly asked to leave a Ferrari store simply because of her simple clothes and shoes, never imagining that her loving giant son, Shaquille O'Neal, would transform that painful moment of rejection into a beautiful, tear-jerking worldwide tribute honoring millions of unsung mothers and proving that no amount of wealth could ever equal a mother's quiet, unbreakable love. The cold night wind cut right through the old wooden walls of the little house in rural Georgia. There was no glass in the windows, just open holes covered with whatever rags Lucille could find. She was barely more than a teenager herself, sitting on the edge of a worn mattress, cradling her baby boy Shaquille in her arms. The baby was fussing from the chill, so she pulled him closer to her chest and started singing a soft lullaby. Her voice was tired, but full of love. She had almost nothing to give him, just her warmth and a few handfuls of rice when there was food at all. But in that moment, rocking him gently as the wind howled outside, Lucille promised herself she would do whatever it took to give her son a better life. She had no idea then that this little boy would grow into a giant, but she already knew he had a big heart, just like hers. Years later, on a warm Saturday afternoon in Beverly Hills, California, a 67-year-old Lucille O'Neal walked into the Ferrari store on Rodeo Drive. She had saved up carefully for months. In her simple white blouse and comfortable shoes, with her gray hair pulled back neatly, she carried herself with quiet dignity. No designer bag, no fancy jewelry, just a hopeful smile on her face. She had seen a red leather racing jacket online with a prancing horse on the chest, and she wanted it for her oldest son's birthday. It wasn't cheap, around $2,000, but she had the money ready. This was her way of showing him how proud she was. The store was bright and shiny, with polished floors and glass cases full of expensive watches and gloves. A fancy race car sat behind a velvet rope near the entrance. Lucille looked around politely and approached the young salesman behind the counter. His name tag said Vincent. He had slicked back hair and a sharp black suit. Right away, his eyes moved up and down, taking in her plain shoes and simple clothes. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice cool and not very friendly. "Yes," Lucille said with a calm smile. "I'm looking for the men's red leather racing jacket, the one with the horse on it." Vincent tilted his head and glanced at the price. "That starts at $2,200. He paused, then added, "Ma'am, maybe this isn't the right place for you. We mostly serve serious clients here. A lot of people just come in to look around." Lucille blinked, surprised by his tone. She tried to explain again that she had the money and wanted to buy a birthday gift for her son. But Vincent shook his head slowly. His voice got firmer. "I'm going to have to ask you to leave. We have an important appointment coming soon, and we need the space clear." There was no real appointment, Lucille could tell. She stood there for a moment, feeling the words hit her like small stones. She had grown up poor on a farm, raised her children mostly on her own, and faced hard times that would have broken most people. Now this young man was telling her she didn't belong, just because of how she looked. Her eyes grew wet, but she didn't let the tears fall. She had learned long ago not to cry in front of people who didn't deserve her tears. Without another word, she turned and walked out of the store, back onto the busy sidewalk of Rodeo Drive. The California sun felt warm on her face, but inside her chest, it still hurt. She stood there for a minute, taking a slow breath, thinking about all the years she had pushed through tougher moments than this. As she started walking away, her grandmother's old words came back to her, clear as if she were hearing them again. "Walk tall, child, no matter how rough the road." Lucille straightened her shoulders a little more and kept going. She didn't know it yet, but this small moment of disrespect was about to set off something much bigger, something that would touch millions of hearts and remind the world what a mother's love is really worth. Her son was Shaquille O'Neal, a man who had risen from those cold Georgia nights to become one of the most successful athletes in the world. But right now, Lucille was just a mother who wanted to give her boy a simple gift, and that quiet strength she carried with her was about to be seen by everyone. Shaquille O'Neal was sitting on his oversized custom couch in his Orlando home, the one built special just for his big frame. The TV was on with NBA highlights playing, and he was chuckling at some of the plays while trying to relax after a long day. His phone lit up on the table next to him. The screen said, "Mama." Shaq smiled and answered right away. He always picked up for her, no matter what. "Hey, Mama, how you doing?" he asked in his deep, warm voice. There was a short pause on the other end. That silence told Shaq something was wrong. His mom was usually strong and straight to the point. When she got quiet like this, it meant she was hurting. "Oh, I'm all right, baby," Lucille said, trying to sound cheerful. "Just had a little situation at a store today. Nothing for you to worry." Lucille took a breath and told him the story. She explained how she had gone into the Ferrari store on Rodeo Drive with the money she saved up, excited to buy him that red leather racing jacket for his birthday. Then the young salesman looked at her clothes and shoes, decided she didn't belong, and asked her to leave. She tried to brush it off with a little laugh. "You know how I am, son. I don't let stuff like that bother me." But Shaq wasn't fooled. His jaw tightened as he listened. Memories came flooding back. He pictured his mother walking alone through the dangerous streets of Newark at night, just to get to work. He remembered the cold apartments, the nights she stretched one pot of rice to feed the whole family, and how she never once complained about being tired or scared. She had raised him and his siblings mostly on her own, always putting them first, even when she had almost nothing. The thought of someone making her feel small in that fancy store hit him hard. "Mama, that's not okay," Shaq said, his voice serious but full of love. "Nobody has the right to treat you like that. Not ever." Lucille tried to calm him. "It's fine, baby. I'm okay. I just wanted to hear your voice and tell you I love you." But Shaq could tell she was holding back tears, the same way she used to when times were tough and she didn't want her kids to worry. He sat there quietly for a moment, staring across the room at some old family photos on the shelf. One picture showed his mom smiling tiredly but proudly while holding him as a little boy. His eyes started to water. This woman had given him everything when the world gave her nothing. She walked through fear and poverty with her head high so her children could have a chance. "I need you to do me a favor," Shaq told her softly. "Keep Tuesday completely open for me, all right? Wear something nice because I'm coming to see you." "Why? What are you planning, Shaquille?" Lucille asked, sounding both curious and a little nervous. She knew her son well. When he made up his mind, nothing could stop him. "Just trust me, Mama," he replied. "We're going to take care of this together." Lucille sighed but agreed. "All right, baby, I'll be ready." After they hung up, Shaq didn't move right away. He kept looking at those old photos, thinking about every sacrifice his mother had made for him. A quiet determination filled his chest. This wasn't just about a store anymore. It was about showing his mom and the world exactly how much she meant to him. Tuesday was going to be a day they would both remember for the rest of their lives. Lucille was still a teenager when she found herself raising baby Shaquille all by herself in Newark, New Jersey. His biological father, Joe, had gotten into trouble with drugs and ended up in prison shortly after Shaquille was born. The young mother had almost no money, no degree, and no one to lean on. Days were hard, and nights were even harder. She worked whatever jobs she could find, often walking through unsafe streets alone after dark, just to bring home a little money for food and diapers. Even when she was exhausted, Lucille would rock her son to sleep and whisper to him that things would get better. She refused to let the tough circumstances break her spirit or take away her hope for his future. Then, in 1974, life gave her a second chance. She met Philip Harrison, a steady and quiet sergeant in the United States Army. Philip was strong, reliable, and kind. He fell in love with Lucille and accepted Shaquille as his own son right from the start. He adopted the boy and gave him his last name. Together, they got married and later had 3 more children: Latifah, Aisha, and Jamal. For the first time in a long while, Lucille felt like she had a real partner by her side. Philip's Army career meant the family had to move from base to base, but it also brought some stability they had never known before. The O'Neal Harrison family traveled together to New Jersey, then Texas, then all the way to Germany, and back to Texas again. Life on a military salary was never easy. Money was always tight. Lucille became an expert at stretching one pot of rice and beans to feed 6 hungry mouths. There were weeks when the electricity got shut off, but she turned those dark nights into camping adventures for the kids. She would light candles, tell stories, and make everyone laugh so they wouldn't feel the hardship. The children never saw her cry or complain. Every morning she got up, got dressed, and faced the day with her head held high, teaching her kids to do the same. Shaquille grew fast, already towering over other kids his age. Through every move and every challenge, Lucille made sure her children felt loved and safe. She would tell young Shaq, "You are bigger than these walls, bigger than this moment. Don't ever let anyone make you feel small." Those words stuck with him. Even when they had very little, she found ways to make birthdays and holidays special with whatever they had. Philip worked hard and provided structure, but it was Lucille's unbreakable spirit that held the family together. She had come from a tiny farm in Georgia with holes in the walls, survived being a single teen mom in one of the toughest neighborhoods in America, and now she was building a life for her children across the world. Looking back, those military base years taught Shaquille so much about resilience and love. His mother never asked for thanks or praise. She simply showed up every single day and gave her all. That quiet strength became the foundation for everything Shaq would later achieve. Even as an adult, he would remember those rice dinners and candlelit camping nights and feel deep gratitude for the woman who turned survival into something beautiful for her family. Shaquille was 13 years old and already standing 6 feet tall when the family was living on a military base in San Antonio, Texas. He had saved up $20 from mowing lawns around the base, and he was excited to finally buy himself a pair of basic basketball sneakers. One afternoon, he walked into the local mall shoe store by himself, clutching the crumpled bills in his pocket. The store smelled like new rubber and leather. Shaq looked around the aisles, his eyes lighting up when he found the shoes he wanted. But something felt off. A store clerk started following him from aisle to aisle, not offering help, just watching him closely. The man's eyes stayed on the tall black boy the whole time, clearly thinking he might try to steal something. Shaq felt the stare burning into his back. His cheeks got hot with embarrassment. He had done nothing wrong, but the way the clerk watched him made him feel small and unwelcome. After a few uncomfortable minutes, Shaq put the sneakers back on the shelf and walked out of the store without buying anything. He went straight home, his $20 still in his pocket, feeling angry and hurt. That night at the kitchen table, he told his mother exactly what had happened. Lucille listened quietly while he spoke, her face full of understanding. She reached across the table and took her son's big hands in hers. "Listen to me, baby," she said softly but firmly. "People are going to look at you and make up their minds before you even open your mouth. They'll judge your skin, your clothes, your height, everything. That's their problem, not yours. You hear me?" Shaq nodded, eyes still stinging. Lucille continued, her voice warm and steady, like it always was when she needed to lift her children up. "You walk into every room like you own it, because in here," she touched his chest, "you do. You are more than what they see on the outside. You've got a good heart and a strong mind. Don't ever let anyone make you feel like you don't belong. Hold your head high, just like I taught you." That kitchen table talk stayed with Shaq for the rest of his life. His mother's words wrapped around him like a warm blanket on a cold night. She had faced the same kind of judgment many times herself, yet she never let it break her. Instead, she turned those painful moments into lessons of dignity and self-worth for her children. In that small military base kitchen, with the smell of dinner still in the air, Lucille reminded her giant son that real strength came from inside, not from what other people thought. Years later, sitting in his Orlando home after talking to his mom about the Ferrari store, that memory came rushing back to Shaq. He could almost hear her voice again, saying those same words. Now it was his turn to stand up for her the way she had always stood up for him. The disrespect his mother faced in that luxury store felt exactly like what he had gone through as a tall, young boy in Texas. But this time, he wasn't going to walk away quietly. This time, he would make sure the world saw his mother the way he had always seen her, as someone who deserved every bit of respect and more. That old memory lit a fire in him and gave him even more determination for what he planned to do on Tuesday. His mom had walked tall through every hard road in her life. Now Shaq was ready to walk right beside her and make sure no one ever tried to make her feel small again. Back in his Orlando home that same evening, Shaq couldn't stop thinking about what had happened to his mom. He picked up his phone again and called someone he hadn't spoken to in a while, his old high school friend, Marcus Webb. They had played ball together at Robert G. Cole High School on the military base in San Antonio. Marcus answered on the second ring, and the two men greeted each other warmly like old times. Shaq got straight to the point. He told Marcus the whole story about Lucille going into the Ferrari store with saved money to buy him a birthday jacket, only to be judged by her clothes and asked to leave. His voice grew heavy as he described how it hurt to hear his strong mother sound so quiet on the phone. Marcus listened without interrupting, then let out a long breath. "Man, that's messed up," he said. "After everything your mom has done for you and the family, what do you need from me?" Shaq explained his idea. He wanted Marcus, who now ran a small custom clothing shop called Threadcraft in South Los Angeles, to design and make a special limited edition red leather jacket. It would look similar to the Ferrari one, but better, with a small gold crown stitched on the chest and the letters L.O. underneath for Lucille O'Neal. Shaq asked for 100 jackets. He didn't want to sell them. He wanted to give them away for free to mothers across the country who had sacrificed everything for their children. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then his voice cracked a little. "I'm in, brother. This means a lot. I'll start working on the designs tonight." The two friends talked a while longer about old memories and how far they had come. Before hanging up, Shaq thanked him and promised to send the details and money right away. Knowing Marcus was on board gave Shaq a sense of peace. This plan felt right. It was bigger than just getting back at one store. It was about honoring his mother in a way that could touch many other families too. After the call, Shaq sat alone in his living room. He pulled out his laptop and opened a folder of old home videos. One by one, he watched them in the quiet of the night. There was footage of his mom in their small apartment, smiling tiredly while serving rice and beans to all the kids. Another clip showed her laughing during one of those power outage camping adventures, telling stories by candlelight. He watched her cheering loudly at his high school games, even when money was tight and she had worked a double shift earlier that day. Tears rolled down Shaq's cheeks as he kept watching. This woman had been a teenager when she had him. She had walked through fear and poverty, raised 4 children, followed the army life, and never asked for anything in return. Every sacrifice, every late night, every word of encouragement had led him to where he was today. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Shaq whispered to himself, "Thank you, Mama. I love you." He closed the laptop and sat there for a long time, thinking about the jackets and the bigger plan taking shape. Tuesday was coming soon, and now he had even more reason to make it special. His mother deserved the world, and Shaq was determined to give her at least a piece of it back. Tuesday morning arrived with bright blue skies over Los Angeles. Shaq had flown in the night before and stayed at a hotel close by. He woke up early, which was rare for him, but today was different. He wanted everything to be perfect. At exactly 10 o'clock, a black Cadillac Escalade pulled up smoothly in front of the house where Lucille was staying with family. Shaq stepped out wearing a tailored navy suit that fit his massive frame perfectly. His shoes were polished, and he looked every bit the successful man he had become. Lucille came out the door a moment later. She had put on a nice cream-colored dress and low heels, with her hair done neatly. She looked elegant and beautiful, but her face showed she was also a little wary. She knew her son had something big planned, and after all these years, she could read him pretty well. Shaq opened the car door for her like a gentleman and gave her a big smile. "Good morning, Mama. You look beautiful." Lucille got in and fastened her seatbelt as the Escalade started moving. She looked over at her giant son and shook her head with a small smile. "Shaquille, where are we going? You still haven't told me anything." Shaq chuckled softly, keeping his eyes on the road for a moment. "We're going shopping, Mama, just like you wanted." "Shopping?" Lucille raised an eyebrow, clearly suspicious. "At that same store?" "Baby, I don't need to go back there. It's not worth it." Her voice was gentle but firm. She didn't want any trouble. Shaq reached over with one big hand and gently patted her arm. "I know you don't want to go back, Mama, but this time it's going to be different. I promise." The car rolled down Santa Monica Boulevard, passing palm trees and sunny storefronts. Lucille kept trying to guess what her son was up to. "Are you buying me a new car or taking me to lunch somewhere fancy?" She smiled playfully, but there was real curiosity and a touch of worry in her eyes. "You know I don't need all that. I'm happy with simple things." Shaq glanced at her with deep affection. "I know, Mama. You never asked for much. That's exactly why we're doing this." He paused for a second, his voice growing softer and more emotional. "You raised me when you were just a kid yourself. You walked through tough streets at night, stretched every meal, and never complained. Today, I want the world to see who you really are, the strongest, most loving person I've ever known." Lucille's eyes softened. She reached out and touched her son's arm. "Shaquille, you don't have to prove anything to me. I already know how much you love me." "I know," he replied quietly, "but I need to do this. Trust me, Mama. Just trust me." The Escalade continued toward Rodeo Drive. Lucille sat back in her seat, still a little nervous but feeling the warmth of her son's love. She had no idea what was about to happen, But something in Shaq's voice told her this day was going to be special. For the first time since the store incident, she allowed herself to feel a spark of hope instead of hurt. Her boy had a plan, and like always, she was willing to follow his lead. The black Escalade slowed down and stopped right in front of the Ferrari store on Rodeo Drive. Lucille looked out the window and her body stiffened. It was the same glass doors, the same shiny building where she had been asked to leave just a few days earlier. She suddenly felt nervous again, her hands tightening in her lap. "Shaquille, I don't think I want to go back in there," she said quietly, her voice showing the hurt she was trying to hide. Shaq turned off the engine and looked at his mother with gentle eyes. He reached over and placed his massive hand softly on her back. "I know it's hard, Mama," he said in a low, reassuring voice, "but I'm right here with you. We're doing this together. Trust me, okay?" Lucille took a deep breath and nodded slowly. She had always been strong for her children, and now she could see how important this was to her son. Shaq stepped out first, then walked around and opened her door. He kept his hand gently on her back as they walked toward the entrance. The two of them made quite a picture, the tiny woman in her cream dress and the giant man in his sharp suit walking in side by side. People on the sidewalk started to notice. Tourists stopped and stared. Phones came out quickly. "Is that Shaq?" someone whispered loudly. "Oh my God, that's Shaquille O'Neal." Another person said, "And that must be his mom." The whispers grew as more people realized who he was. Shaq didn't pay them any attention. His focus stayed completely on his mother. As they stepped through the glass doors, the cool air of the store hit them. Everything looked exactly the same. The polished floors, the glass cases, the fancy race car behind the velvet rope. Behind the counter stood Vincent, the same young salesman with the slicked back hair and black suit. When he looked up and saw who was walking toward him, his face went completely pale. His eyes widened in shock. He recognized Lucille immediately, and he definitely recognized the giant man beside her. Vincent's hands started to tremble behind the counter. The other sales associates froze in place, watching the scene unfold. The tension in the store grew thick. You could almost feel the air get heavier. Lucille stayed close to her son, her heart beating fast, but she kept her head up just like she had taught her children to do. Shaq stood tall and calm, his presence filling the entire room. He looked down at Vincent with steady eyes. This was the same place that had tried to make his mother feel small. Now he was back with her, ready to show them who she really was. The moment had finally arrived, and the whole store seemed to hold its breath. Shaq stood at the counter, towering over everything in the store. His calm presence made the whole room feel smaller. Vincent looked up at him, his face still pale and his hands shaking slightly. The other staff members had stopped what they were doing and were watching in silence. Shaq placed one big hand gently on the counter and spoke in a deep, steady voice that carried through the store. "My mother wants to shop," he said simply, "and today, she is the most important person in this store." Vincent opened his mouth, but no words came out at first. He swallowed hard and finally managed to say, "Of course. Welcome back." But Shaq wasn't finished. He looked down at the young salesman with quiet strength, not raising his voice or showing any anger. "Saturday, my mom came in here with her own money," Shaq continued calmly. "She wanted to buy me a birthday gift, a red leather jacket. She saved up for it because she loves me. But you looked at her clothes, looked at her shoes, and told her she didn't belong here. You asked her to leave like she wasn't good enough." The words landed heavily in the quiet store. Lucille stood beside her son, one hand resting lightly on his arm. She didn't say anything, but her eyes were full of emotion. Shaq kept going, his voice warm and full of respect as he talked about his mother. "She raised me when she was still a teenager," he said, "walked through dangerous streets at night to get to work, stretched one pot of rice to feed all of us when that was all we had, moved from base to base with the Army, making sure we felt safe and loved, even when money was tight. She never asked for anything for herself. Not once." Shaq paused for a moment, looking Vincent straight in the eyes. "She's the reason I'm standing here today. So when she walks into any place, she deserves to be treated with respect, not judgment." The staff stood completely still, stunned by his words. A couple of customers nearby had stopped browsing and were listening too. No one expected the giant man to speak with such calm power and love. Vincent looked down at the counter, his face red with shame. He couldn't meet Shaq's eyes anymore. Lucille gently squeezed her son's arm. "Baby, that's enough," she whispered softly, but there was pride in her voice. Shaq nodded at her, then looked back at Vincent. "Now," he said, his tone becoming gentle again, "my mother would like to shop, and we're taking our time." The tension in the store was thick, but something had clearly shifted. Shaq had spoken from the heart, not with anger, but with the quiet strength his mother had taught him. Everyone in the room could feel it. Lucille walked slowly through the store with Shaq right beside her. She went back to the display where the red leather racing jacket was hanging. It was the same one she had come for on Saturday. She touched the smooth material gently and smiled a little. "This is the one I wanted for your birthday," she said softly. Shaq took the jacket off the rack and held it up. "Then we're getting it," he said with a warm smile. He placed it on the counter carefully. But he wasn't done. He picked up a pair of matching driving gloves and showed them to her. "What do you think about these, Mama? They'd go perfect with the jacket." Lucille shook her head quickly. "Baby, that's too much. I only came for the jacket." Shaq smiled and set the gloves on the counter anyway. "Nothing will ever be too much for you, Mama." They continued through the store together. Shaq picked up a pair of stylish sunglasses and held them out for her opinion. Then came a leather weekend bag, followed by 2 nice watches and a soft silk scarf. With every new item, he turned to his mother and asked, "You like this one?" His voice was patient and full of love. Each time Lucille would protest gently, saying, "Shaquille, it's really too much, baby. I don't need all this." And every single time Shaq would reply with the same tender words, "Nothing will ever be too much for you, Mama." The staff watched in silence as the pile on the counter grew. Vincent moved carefully, ringing up each item without saying much. The total kept climbing, but Shaq didn't flinch. He wasn't trying to show off. He was simply enjoying spoiling the woman who had given him everything when she had so little. At one point, Lucille stopped and looked up at her son with watery eyes. "You don't have to do all this," she whispered. "Just being with you is enough." Shaq put his big arm around her shoulders and pulled her close for a moment. "I know, Mama, but you deserve to feel special. You've made me feel special my whole life." The emotional shopping continued. Every new item brought another soft protest from Lucille and another loving reply from Shaq. By the time they finished, the total had gone well over $37,000. Shaq handed over his black card without hesitation and signed the receipt. He wasn't buying things. He was creating a memory his mother would never forget. As they gathered the bags, Lucille looked at her son with a mix of love and disbelief. The store that had tried to push her out was now watching them with quiet respect. For Shaq, this moment was about so much more than money or clothes. It was about showing his mom that her sacrifices had not gone unnoticed and that her son would always make sure she was treated the way she deserved. Before they left the store, Shaq leaned down slowly so his face was closer to Vincent's level. The giant man spoke in a low, calm voice that only the young salesman could hear. The rest of the store stayed quiet, watching from a distance. "I'm not angry with you," Shaq whispered, "but I want you to remember something important. Every person who walks through that door has a story you know nothing about, especially mothers. You never know what they've been through, what they've survived, or how many nights they stayed strong for their kids when no one else was there." Vincent stood frozen, his hands still trembling slightly on the counter. Shaq continued gently, "My mom raised me when she was barely grown herself. She walked dangerous streets at night so I could eat. She made sure I never felt poor even when we had almost nothing. Today, you judged her by her shoes and her clothes, but she's the strongest person I've ever known. Next time someone like her comes in, remember, you might be looking at someone's whole world. Treat them like it." Vincent's eyes started to water. He tried to hold it together, but Shaq's words hit him deep inside. In his mind, he suddenly saw his own mother, a tired woman who worked long hours at a laundromat and cleaned offices at night. She had raised him alone after his father left when he was 7. They lived in a small trailer, and she never had nice things either. For years, Vincent had been ashamed of where he came from. That's why he had pushed Lucille away so quickly. She reminded him too much of his own past. "I'm sorry," Vincent whispered back, his voice cracking. "I didn't know. I was wrong." Shaq nodded slowly. "You still have time to make it right. Call your mom. Tell her you love her. Don't wait until it's too late." With that, Shaq straightened up, gathered the shopping bags, and placed his hand gently on Lucille's back. They walked out of the store together, leaving Vincent standing behind the counter, completely shaken. The young man wiped his eyes quickly, his mind replaying memories of his mother's tired smile and hard-working hands. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of how he had been treating people and how much he wanted to change. They stepped out of the Ferrari store into the bright California sunshine. The shopping bags were loaded into the back of the black Escalade. Shaq helped his mother into the passenger seat and then climbed in on the driver's side. For the first few moments, neither of them spoke. The car was quiet, except for the soft sound of the engine. Lucille looked down at the bags on her lap and then turned to her son. Her eyes were already glistening. Without saying a word, she leaned over and wrapped her arms around Shaq as best she could. The tears she had been holding back finally came. "I don't need fancy things, baby," she said, her voice breaking. "I only need my boy. That's all I've ever needed." Shaq felt his own eyes getting wet. He shifted his big body as much as he could in the driver's seat and folded his giant frame toward his mother. He wrapped his long arms around her carefully, like he was protecting the most precious thing in the world. At that moment, he wasn't the famous basketball star or the wealthy businessman. He was just her son, holding the woman who had given him everything. "I know, Mama," he whispered, his deep voice thick with emotion. "But you deserve to have nice things too. You went without for so many years, so we could have more. Let me do this for you." Lucille cried softly against his shoulder. "You've already done so much. You bought me a house. You take care of the whole family. I just wanted to buy you one simple jacket. And now look at all this." She let out a small laugh through her tears. Shaq held her a little tighter. "That jacket wasn't just about the store, Mama. It was about them not seeing who you are. I needed them to see. I needed you to see how much you mean to me." They stayed like that for a while, mother and son sharing a rare, vulnerable moment in the middle of Rodeo Drive. People walked by outside, but inside the Escalade, it felt like their own private world. Lucille eventually pulled back and wiped her eyes, smiling at her giant son. Shaq gently brushed a tear from her cheek with his huge hand, the same hand that had once dominated basketball courts around the world. "I love you, Mama," he said quietly. "More than all the money, all the championships, all of it." "I love you too, baby," she replied, her voice soft and full of warmth. "Always have. Always will." The Escalade stayed parked a little longer as they sat together, letting the emotions settle. This moment in the car meant more than everything they had bought inside the store. It was pure love between a mother who had sacrificed everything and the son who would never forget it. A few days later, Shaq flew out to South Los Angeles to visit his old friend Marcus at Threadcraft. The small shop was tucked into a modest building, filled with sewing machines, fabric rolls, and the steady hum of work. Marcus and his small team were already busy bringing Shaq's idea to life. When Shaq walked in, Marcus greeted him with a big hug and a proud smile. "Come see what we've been working on," Marcus said, leading him to a large table in the back. There they were, the first samples of the special red leather jackets. The color was rich and bold, just like the one from the Ferrari store, but the real difference was on the chest. A beautiful gold crown had been carefully stitched above the letters LO. Each jacket felt meaningful, like it carried a story. Shaq ran his big hand over one of the jackets, nodding with approval. "This is perfect," he said quietly. "It feels right." Marcus sat down with him and listened as Shaq shared more stories about his mother. He told him about the cold house in Georgia with no windows, the nights Lucille walked dangerous streets in Newark, and the way she turned power outages into fun camping adventures for the kids. He talked about her quiet strength, how she raised 4 children and never asked for anything in return. As Shaq spoke, the whole team stopped working to listen. His words filled the shop with warmth and inspiration. One of the seamstresses wiped her eyes and said, "Your mama sounds like a real queen. We're going to make these jackets with love." Marcus nodded. "We're not just making clothes. We're making something that honors every mother who fought hard for her kids." He showed Shaq the detailed stitching on the crown and how they had chosen special lining fabric that felt soft and strong at the same time. Every jacket would come with a handwritten note from Shaq that read, "You walked so your children could run. This is from a son who knows what a mother's love can do." Shaq stayed for hours, watching the team work and sharing more memories. He even helped pick out small details on the inside labels. By the end of the visit, the shop felt alive with purpose. Marcus walked Shaq to the door and gave him another hug. "This is going to mean a lot to a lot of people," Marcus said. "Thank you for trusting me with this." Shaq smiled. "Thank you for helping me honor my mama. We're going to make 100 mothers feel seen and appreciated." As he left the shop that day, Shaq felt a deep sense of peace. These jackets were no longer just an idea. They were becoming something real. A crown for mothers who had earned it the hard way. And soon, they would be making their way into the hands of women just like his own mom. That weekend, the whole family gathered for dinner at Lucille's house in Los Angeles. The table was full of good food, laughter, and the warm noise of grandchildren running around. Shaq had quietly arranged for the first special jacket to be delivered just in time. After everyone had eaten, he stood up with a red box in his big hands and asked for a little quiet. "Mama, can you come sit right here?" he said, guiding her to the center of the living room. The family gathered around, curious and smiling. Lucille sat down, looking a little confused but happy. "What is this, Shaquille?" she asked with a soft laugh. Shaq knelt down in front of her, this giant man folding his 7'1" body so he could look his mother in the eyes. He placed the red box gently in her lap. "This is for you, Mama. Open it." Lucille carefully lifted the lid. Inside was the beautiful red leather jacket with the gold crown stitched on the chest and the letters LO shining underneath. The moment she saw it, her hands started to shake. She touched the crown softly, tracing the initials with her fingers. Tears filled her eyes and then spilled over. She covered her mouth as the emotions hit her all at once. "Oh, baby," she whispered, her voice breaking. Shaq stayed kneeling, his own eyes wet. "You walked so we could run, Mama," he said, his deep voice full of love. "This jacket isn't from any fancy store. It's yours, made special just for you, for everything you gave us when you had so little. I love you." Lucille pulled the jacket out of the box and held it to her chest, crying happy tears. The whole family was moved. Some of the kids wiped their eyes, and the adults stood there quietly, feeling the power of the moment. Latifa, Aisha, and Jamal hugged their mother, all of them remembering the sacrifices she had made for them. "You didn't have to do this," Lucille said through her tears, looking at her son. "But I'm so thankful." Shaq smiled and helped her put the jacket on. It fit perfectly. She stood up and turned around slowly so everyone could see. The gold crown seemed to glow under the lights. "It feels like a hug from you," she told him softly. One of the family members recorded the whole moment on their phone. They meant to keep it as a private memory, but later that night, a short clip was shared online. Within hours, the video of Shaq kneeling in front of his mother, presenting her the special jacket, exploded. Millions of people watched Lucille's emotional reaction and heard Shaq's heartfelt words. Comments poured in from mothers and sons all over the world, many saying it made them cry and call their own moms. That family dinner became much more than a private celebration. It turned into a moment that touched hearts everywhere. And for Lucille, it was a beautiful reminder that her quiet love had been seen and deeply appreciated by the son she had given everything to. The video from the family dinner spread faster than anyone expected. Within hours, it had been viewed millions of times. People shared it with their friends, their sisters, and especially their mothers. The clip of Shaq kneeling in front of Lucille, giving her the special red jacket with the gold crown, touched something deep in people's hearts. Comments flooded in from all over the world. "This made me call my mom right away," one person wrote. "I'm crying at my desk," said another. The hashtag #WalkLikeMama started trending on every major platform. It quickly spread to over 40 countries. Mothers posted pictures of themselves walking proudly in their own simple clothes or in the new red jackets that were starting to ship out. Some wore regular work uniforms. Others posted old photos from tough times, all with the same message: "I walked so my children could run." Single moms shared stories about working 2 or 3 jobs while raising kids. Military mothers posted pictures in uniform, talking about moving bases and keeping their families strong. Immigrant mothers wrote about learning a new language and culture while making sure their children felt safe and loved. The internet turned into a beautiful wave of gratitude and recognition for mothers everywhere. News stations picked up the story. From New York to Tokyo, people were talking about Lucille O'Neal and the simple act of love from her son. Some mothers said they watched the video multiple times with their grown children, leading to honest conversations and lots of tears. The video showed something real: a successful son who never forgot where he came from or who got him there. Shaq sat with his mom the next day and showed her some of the messages. Lucille was quiet at first, overwhelmed by the response. "I didn't do this for attention," she said softly. "I just did what any mother would do." But even she couldn't help smiling when she read some of the comments from people saying the story gave them strength. The lightning strike of that one video changed the mood across social media. For a moment, the world paused to honor mothers, the ones who walk tall even when the road is hard. Threadcraft, Marcus's small shop, started getting hundreds of messages from people wanting their own jackets or just wanting to say thank you. The simple red jacket with the gold crown had become a symbol of quiet strength and deep love. And in the middle of all this attention, Lucille O'Neal remained the same humble woman she had always been. But now, millions of people knew her name and her story, and they were walking a little taller because of it. As the jacket started shipping out, beautiful stories began coming back. Shaq and Lucille read many of them together, often with tears in their eyes. Each red jacket with the gold crown carried a special note and reached mothers who had quietly carried their families for years. One of the first jackets went to Maria, a single mom in Chicago working 3 jobs. She cleaned offices at night, served food during the day, and drove for rideshare in between. She raised 2 boys alone after their father left. When the red box arrived, Maria sat on her small couch and cried as she read Shaq's note. "I never thought anyone saw me," she said in a video she recorded. "I just kept walking for my sons." She put on the jacket and stood taller, telling her boys that this was proof their mother's hard work mattered. Another jacket reached Denise, a military mother who had moved her family across the country multiple times while her husband was deployed. She had held everything together through lonely nights and difficult goodbyes. When she opened her box, she broke down in front of her teenage daughter. "This crown is for every mother who kept going when she wanted to fall apart," she said. Her daughter hugged her tight, finally understanding how strong her mom really was. In California, an immigrant mother named Sophia received her jacket. She had come to America with almost nothing, learned English while working long hours in a factory, and still made sure her 3 children went to school every day with clean clothes and full stomachs. When she read the note, she held the jacket to her chest and whispered a prayer of thanks. Later, she posted a photo wearing it proudly at her kitchen table, writing, "This jacket is not just cloth. It is respect for every mother who started over so her children could have better." Hundreds more stories poured in. A grandmother in Texas who raised her grandson after losing her daughter. A bus driver in New York who worked extra shifts so her kids could play sports. Each woman had her own journey, but they all shared the same quiet strength Lucille had shown for decades. Shaq made sure to personally thank many of them. Some mothers even met Lucille and Shaq in person. The hugs and shared tears created bonds that went beyond the jackets. These women, who had felt invisible for so long, suddenly felt seen and celebrated. Through these stories, the red jacket with the gold crown became more than clothing. It became a symbol that said, "Your sacrifices mattered, your love changed everything, and you are not walking alone anymore." A few weeks later, a simple white envelope arrived in Shaq's mailbox. There was no fancy stamp or return address, just neat handwriting. Inside was a 2-page letter from Vincent, the young salesman from the Ferrari store. Shaq sat down at his kitchen table and read it slowly. Vincent wrote honestly about the shame he felt that day. He explained how seeing Lucille in simple clothes had reminded him too much of his own mother. Growing up in a trailer park outside Bakersfield, Vincent had watched his single mom work at a laundromat by day and clean offices at night. After his father left when he was 7, it was just the 2 of them. For years, Vincent had been embarrassed about where he came from. He moved to Los Angeles, chasing a better life in fashion, and thought expensive clothes and luxury stores made someone important. "When your mother walked in," Vincent wrote, "I saw my own mom. Instead of seeing strength, I saw what I was trying to run away from. I pushed her out because I was pushing away my own past. I was wrong." He described how Shaq's quiet words in the store had stayed with him. That same night, for the first time in over 2 years, Vincent called his mother. They talked for 3 hours. He cried. She cried. He apologized for being ashamed of her and their life. His mother forgave him immediately, telling him she was just happy to hear his voice. At the bottom of the letter, Vincent included a small photo. It showed him and his mother standing together in front of the laundromat where she had worked for 23 years. Both of them were smiling. Vincent was wearing one of the red threadcraft jackets with the gold crown on the chest. Shaq read the letter 3 times. His eyes were wet when he finished. He immediately called his mom and read parts of it to her over the phone. Lucille listened quietly, then said with her usual simple wisdom, "Good. Now that boy knows what matters. Tell him to keep calling his mother. Life is too short." Vincent's letter didn't just show his own healing. It proved that one moment of kindness and truth could ripple out and change someone's entire family. Shaq folded the letter carefully and kept it in a safe place. It became one of the most meaningful things he had ever received. The young salesman who once judged Lucille O'Neal had learned a powerful lesson from her son. And through that lesson, he found his way back to the mother who had loved him all along. Shaq called his mom that same evening. The phone rang only twice before Lucille picked up. "Hey, baby," she said warmly. "How are you doing?" "I'm good, Mama," Shaq replied. "But I got something I want to read to you. It's a letter from Vincent, the young man from the Ferrari store." Lucille grew quiet. "Go ahead," she said softly. Shaq read the letter slowly, his deep voice gentle as he shared Vincent's honest words about his shame, his mother, and the long phone call they finally had. When he finished, there was a peaceful silence on the line. Then Lucille let out a small, knowing laugh. "Well," she said, "I'm glad that boy found his way back to his mama. That's what matters most." Shaq smiled on the other end. He even sent a picture of them together. "He's wearing one of the red jackets now." Lucille chuckled again. "Good for him. But tell that young man something for me. Call his mother more than once every 2 years. She carried him for 9 months and worked hard for him. He can pick up the phone more often." Shaq laughed warmly. That was pure Lucille, honest, direct, and full of love. "I'll make sure he hears that, Mama." They stayed on the phone for a long time after that, talking about everything and nothing. Lucille asked about Shaq's children and how he was feeling. Shaq asked her if she had worn the new jacket yet and whether she needed anything. The conversation felt easy and safe, like so many they had shared over the years. Before they hung up, Shaq said quietly, "You changed that boy's life, Mama, just by being you." Lucille was quiet for a moment. "No, baby. We all just doing what we supposed to do. Love our kids and keep walking forward. That's all." Her simple wisdom always touched him deeply. Even with the whole world watching their story, Lucille stayed the same humble, strong woman she had always been. Shaq felt grateful all over again for the mother he was blessed with. "Love you, Mama," he said, before ending the call. "Love you more, baby," she replied, the same way she had for decades. That phone call between mother and son was another reminder that the real power in their story wasn't the fame or the jackets. It was the steady, everyday love that had always held their family together. Marcus Webb stood in the middle of his small shop in the South Los Angeles, looking around in disbelief. What started as one phone call from Shaq had completely changed his life. Orders for the special red jackets were pouring in every day. People didn't just want the Lucille O'Neal design. They wanted custom versions to honor their own mothers, grandmothers, and wives. Marcus had to hire 15 new employees in just a few weeks. The little one-room shop quickly grew into a full warehouse with more sewing machines and cutting tables. For the first time in years, Marcus felt truly successful. He walked through the busy workspace one afternoon, watching his team carefully stitching gold crowns onto red leather. Many of the workers were mothers themselves, and they brought their own stories to the job. One evening, Marcus called Shaq to thank him. "Brother, I don't even know what to say," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "This shop was barely hanging on. Now we're creating jobs and making something that actually matters to people. All because of you and your mama." Shaq laughed warmly on the other end. "You did the hard work, man. You and your team. My mom and I just started it. You made it grow." Marcus thought back to their high school days on the military base. He had struggled after graduation, warehouse jobs, delivery trucks, trying to find his way. Shaq had quietly helped him over the years, but this project felt different. It gave Marcus purpose. He started paying better wages and even created a small program to help single mothers in the community learn sewing skills. The red jackets were now being worn in cities all across America. Women posted pictures wearing them to work, to school events, and on quiet walks in their neighborhoods. Each photo came with a story of sacrifice and love. Marcus kept a folder on his phone full of thank you messages from customers. Reading them late at night always brought tears to his eyes. One day, Lucille visited the shop with Shaq. She walked through the warehouse slowly, greeting every worker and thanking them personally. The team was starstruck and deeply moved. Lucille told them, "You're not just making jackets. You're reminding mothers that they are seen. Keep doing good work." That visit meant everything to Marcus. As he watched Lucille leave in her own red jacket with the gold crown, he realized this was much bigger than business. It had become a movement of respect, gratitude, and second chances. Threadcraft was no longer just a clothing shop. It was proof that one act of love from a son to his mother could lift up many other families along the way. Lucille O'Neal never wanted to be famous. All she had wanted was to buy her son a birthday jacket. But now, everywhere she went, people recognized her. At the grocery store, at church, even when she went for her morning walks, strangers would smile warmly and say, "Thank you." Some mothers hugged her with tears in their eyes, telling her how the story had touched their lives. A couple of months after the incident, something quietly changed inside the Ferrari store on Rodeo Drive. One morning, the staff came in to find a small, elegant plaque mounted near the entrance. It was made of polished brass and read in simple, clear letters, "Every person who walks through this door is our most important guest. Treat them with respect. You never know their story." Vincent was the one who suggested it. After reading Shaq's whispered words and writing his letter, he had become a different person. No longer the judgmental salesman who sized people up by their clothes, he now greeted every customer with genuine warmth and patience. He listened to their stories, helped them without rushing, and made sure no one ever felt the way Lucille had felt that Saturday afternoon. The store manager never publicly said who requested the plaque, but everyone on Rodeo Drive knew. It was the big man, Shaquille O'Neal, the one who had returned with his mother and spoken with quiet power instead of anger. Management agreed to the change without hesitation. The story had affected them too. Vincent started arriving early every day. He kept a small photo of his mother in his wallet and looked at it whenever he needed a reminder. When older customers or people in simple clothes walked in, he made extra effort to make them feel welcome. One afternoon, an elderly woman came in looking nervous, much like Lucille had. Vincent smiled kindly and said, "Take your time, ma'am. We're happy you're here." Word began to spread among the local workers and shop owners. The Ferrari store on Rodeo Drive had a new reputation, one built on respect instead of exclusion. Some customers came in just to see the plaque and hear the story. Vincent would share it humbly, always ending with the same message. "I learned that day that mothers like Mrs. O'Neal built the world we live in. The least we can do is treat them right." Shaq and Lucille heard about the changes through a friend. When Shaq told his mother, she simply nodded and said, "That's good. Maybe that young man will keep calling his mama now." There was no bitterness in her voice, only quiet satisfaction that something positive had come from a painful moment. The plaque didn't make the store less luxurious, but it made it more human. And every time Vincent walked past it, he remembered the giant who leaned down and changed his life with a few soft words. He remembered the mother who raised a son strong enough to speak up with love instead of revenge. What started as one difficult afternoon had quietly rewritten the rules on one of the most exclusive streets in America. Respect was now the standard, all because one son refused to let anyone make his mother feel small. Shaq and Lucille decided to meet some of the mothers who had received the red jackets. They chose a quiet community center in Los Angeles for the gathering. What started as a simple afternoon quickly turned into something deeply moving. Maria flew in from Chicago with her 2 boys. The moment she saw Lucille, she walked straight up and wrapped her in a tight hug. "Thank you," Maria whispered through tears. "I worked 3 jobs for years and felt invisible. Your story and this jacket made me feel seen for the first time." Lucille held her close and said softly, "You've been walking tall all along, sister. I'm just happy you know it now." Denise, the military mother, came with her daughter. She wore her red jacket proudly over her blouse. When she met Lucille, both women started crying. Denise shared stories of lonely nights on base and keeping her family strong during deployments. Lucille listened with understanding eyes and told her, "We do what we have to for our babies, and we keep going." Shaq stood back quietly, watching with a full heart as his mother comforted another strong woman. Sophia, the immigrant mother, brought her 3 children. She hugged Lucille and thanked her in a mix of English and Spanish. "This jacket reminds me every day that my struggles matter," she said. Her oldest daughter translated while wiping her own tears. The kids gathered around Shaq, shy at first, but soon laughing as he joked with them and showed them his big hands that once blocked shots on the court. One after another, the mothers shared their stories. There were hugs that lasted a long time, laughter mixed with tears, and quiet conversations that felt like family. Shaq listened to every word, sometimes adding his own memories of his mother's strength. Lucille stayed humble, holding hands and offering simple words of encouragement that seemed to heal something in each woman. At one point, all the mothers stood together wearing their red jackets with the gold crowns. They looked at each other and smiled. Shaq took a photo of the group with Lucille in the center. The connections formed that day went far beyond the jackets. These women promised to stay in touch and support each other, creating a small network of mothers who understood the journey. As the afternoon ended, Lucille turned to her son with wet eyes. "Look what you started, baby," she said. Shaq smiled and pulled her into a gentle hug. "No, Mama, this started with you a long time ago." These unexpected reunions showed the real power of the story. One moment of disrespect had grown into many moments of love, connection, and healing. Mothers who once felt alone now knew they were part of something bigger. Shaq knew the red jackets were just the beginning. A few months after the story went viral, he stood at a small press event in Los Angeles with his mother by his side. Cameras flashed as he announced the creation of the Lucille O'Neal Foundation. The mission was simple but powerful: support single mothers, military mothers, and struggling families across the country with scholarships, job training, housing help, and mentorship programs. "This isn't charity," Shaq said, his deep voice steady and sincere. "This is payback. My mama gave everything so I could have a chance. Now we're making sure other mothers get that same chance. No mother should have to choose between food and hope for her kids." Lucille stood quietly beside him in her red jacket with the gold crown. She wasn't used to being the center of attention, but when Shaq asked her to say a few words, she stepped forward with quiet grace. "I never dreamed of any of this," she said softly. "I just tried to raise my children the best I could. If this foundation helps even one mother keep walking when the road gets hard, then that's more than enough for me." The announcement touched many hearts. Donations started coming in right away. Single mothers wrote emails sharing their stories and thanking the foundation for giving them real hope. Within the first year, the foundation helped dozens of families with rent assistance, school supplies, and career training. Shaq made sure Lucille was involved in the work she felt most comfortable with. She visited community centers, sat and talked with young mothers, and offered the same simple wisdom she had given her own children. "Keep your head up," she would tell them. "You're bigger than your circumstances. Your babies are watching you." One afternoon, Lucille met a young single mother named Jasmine, who reminded her of herself many years ago. Jasmine was raising 2 small children while working nights. After their talk, Jasmine hugged Lucille tightly and said, "You make me believe I can do this." Lucille smiled and replied, "You already are, baby. Just keep going, one day at a time." Shaq watched his mother from across the room, his chest full of pride. The foundation wasn't just about money. It was about carrying forward the same spirit Lucille had shown through cold nights, tough neighborhoods, and military base moves. Her influence was now growing across generations, touching families she would never meet. At the end of a long day, Shaq and Lucille sat together on a bench outside one of the community centers. "You built something real, baby," she told him. "I'm so proud." Shaq took her hand in his. "It's all because of you, Mama. This is your legacy, not just for our family, but for so many others." The Lucille O'Neal Foundation became a beacon of hope. What started with one mother being disrespected in a fancy store had grown into a lasting movement of love, respect, and support for mothers everywhere. One peaceful evening, Shaq and Lucille took a quiet walk together near her home in Los Angeles. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft oranges and pinks. There were no cameras, no crowds, just the 2 of them walking side by side. Lucille wore her red jacket with the gold crown, and Shaq kept his pace slow so she could walk comfortably. They didn't talk much at first. They simply enjoyed the calm. After a while, Lucille looked up at her tall son and smiled. "It's been a wild ride these past months, hasn't it, baby?" Shaq nodded and let out a deep breath. "Yeah, Mama. I never thought buying you a jacket would turn into all this. The videos, the foundation, all those mothers reaching out. But I'm really glad it did." Lucille reached over and took his big hand in hers. "I don't need any of the fame or the attention," she said softly, "but seeing how it's helping other mothers, that makes my heart full. All I ever wanted was for my kids to grow up strong and kind. Looks like you turned out all right." Shaq chuckled, but his eyes were serious. "I turned out all right because of you. All those cold nights in Georgia, the tough streets in Newark, the rice dinners, the power outages you turned into adventures. You never gave up on me. Even when I was just a tall, clumsy kid, you told me I was bigger than my circumstances." They stopped at a small bench under a tree and sat down. Lucille leaned against her son's shoulder. "And you never forgot where you came from," she said. "That's what makes me the proudest. Not the money or the championships. It's seeing the man you became, someone who stands up for what's right and makes sure others feel seen." Shaq wrapped his arm around her gently. "I just want you to know that every good thing in my life started with you. The house I bought you, the cars, everything. None of it comes close to what you gave me. I love you, Mama, more than I can ever say." Lucille's eyes grew misty. She patted his hand and whispered, "I love you too, baby. Always have. And I'm so grateful we get to share these moments together. Life moves fast, but family is what stays." They sat there for a long time. watching the sky darken and the first stars appear. The conversation drifted to the future. Shaq's kids, Lucille's hopes for her grandchildren, and the work the foundation would continue to do. There was no rush, no pressure, just a mother and son reflecting on a long journey filled with love, resilience, and quiet strength. In that simple evening walk, away from all the noise, they found the heart of everything that mattered. The story that started with pain in a fancy store had led them here, to a place of deep gratitude and unbreakable bond. The story that began on a simple Saturday afternoon in Beverly Hills had traveled far beyond Rodeo Drive. What started as one mother being told she didn't belong grew into something much bigger. A reminder heard around the world about love, respect, and never forgetting who got you there. Lucille O'Neal never asked to be in the spotlight. She just wanted to buy her son a birthday gift. But her quiet strength, built through cold nights with no windows, dangerous walks in Newark, and years of stretching meals and stretching hope, touched millions of hearts. Her son Shaquille saw it all and refused to stay silent. He turned a moment of hurt into a movement of healing. Through the red jackets with the gold crown, the foundation that now helps thousands of mothers, the viral videos, and the changed lives, one truth stood out clearly. A mother's love has no price tag. It can't be measured in dollars or championships. It shows up in rice dinners, candlelit stories, and the steady voice that tells a child they are bigger than their circumstances. Shaq often says his greatest achievement wasn't winning rings or building wealth. It was making sure his mama knew she was loved and appreciated. He knelt before her, not just in that family living room, but every day in the way he lives his life. And Lucille, even now, still tells him the same thing she said when he was a little boy. Keep walking tall, baby. To every son and daughter reading this, the message is simple. Call your mother, hug her, tell her thank you. Don't wait for a fancy store moment or a viral video. Do it today while you still can. Honor the women who walked hard roads so you could run easier ones. Wear their lessons like a crown. The Ferrari store still stands on Rodeo Drive with its new plaque. Vincent still works there, calling his mom every week. Marcus's shop continues to grow, creating jobs and hope. And Lucille O'Neal still walks through life the same way she always has. Head high, heart open, and full of quiet faith. This is more than a story about a rich son and his mother. It's about every mother who was ever told she didn't belong, and every child who decided to prove the world wrong by loving her loudly. So walk tall today. Love your mama like Shaq loves his. Because in the end, nothing matters more than that. Thank you for walking this journey with us. Now go call your mother. Tell her she's the most important person in your world. She already knows, but she'll love hearing it anyway.